Tonight, we celebrate Chaos, a lady of many names. Tiamat in the Babylonian. Eris, Kalisti, Chaos.
Okay, nobody move! Nobody move! Nobody move! You don't have any idea of what I'm capable of doing with this double-headed matriarchal feminist axe that I stole from a museum in ancient Crete, brought back to be with us here tonight. As of now, ladies and gentlemen, you are being entertained by a crime, a terrorist crime involving you. As of now, I have kidnapped you all and I'm holding you hostage until my demands are met. Furthermore, I hereby kidnap myself and I'm holding myself hostage until my demands are met. This crime I commit not for my own selfish gain, but because I love you more than I love you. Here is my list of demands. I demand that you undo the black magic that you practiced on yourself. I demand that you pretend to be crazy so you can get away with doing what's right. I demand that you relax and breathe deeply and fill your magic lungs with cleansing blue oxygen and make every beautiful animal cell in your body purr with luminous gratitude. And turn yourself into a violet cloud of electric love. I demand that you stick out your tongue and cross your eyes and put on your funniest face and kick yourself in the ass. And I demand that you barge into the ecstatic state by any means necessary. I demand that you get into the trance from whatever it takes. Choose 10 from among the following ecstatic techniques: fasting, intense solitude, alcohol or drugs, prolonged silence, intentional lack of sleep, global warming in your pants, pretending to be dead for 3 days, telling nothing but lies for 24 hours, forcing yourself to laugh about nothing, concentrating intensely on a beetle in dung, looking at yourself in the mirror for 3 hours without blinking, dancing all night with your clothes on inside out, discovering information that renders your political beliefs irrelevant, witnessing an event considered impossible by your rational mind, reviewing in painstaking detail the history of your life, dreaming that you're dreaming that you're dreaming, loving your enemies in case your friends turn out to be jerks, burn your money, create your own double, call everything by its wrong name, renounce your horoscope, childbirth, travel in outer space. I hereby demand that you barge into the ecstatic state with the help of a little ecstatic love spell. I demand that you help me cast an ecstatic love spell on you tonight, starting with turning this stinking concrete hole in the wall into an ancient sacred temple, overflowing with hilarious kundalini. I demand that you turn this whole neighborhood where rats run free and 9-year-olds carry guns into a T.A.Z, temporary autonomous zone, true alien zodiac, ticklish atavistic psycho, trustworthy asshole zen, transgress all zippers. I demand that you now follow me into the ecstatic state by any means necessary as I call on our divine friends to help us because they love us more than they love us. And as I face the east, and I call to the God of the east, O God of the east, you primordial mushroom cloud, you psychedelic mushroom cloud at the center of all our brains. O God of the east, make us disciplined enough to go crazy in the name of creation, not destruction. Now I call to the goddess of the south. O goddess of the south, you sly universal virus with no fucking opinion. Give us bigger and better and more original sins. Give us wilder, wetter, and more interesting problems. And oh God of the West, you wealthy anarchists burning heaven to the ground, brainwash us with your freedom so that we never love our own pain more than anyone else's pain. O goddess of the north, who gives us so much love and confusion mixed together that our morality collapses, who gives us so much change that we want to puke, guide us to realize that we are all completely different from what we think we are, more exciting than we could possibly imagine. No goddess of the north, turn this stinking concrete hole in the wall into an ancient sacred temple overflowing with hilarious kundalini, and inspire those in attendance tonight to join me in the stream that will send us into that place where the dream time and the wake time meet. God has inspired these people to scream with me on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Proscenium and sacrifice. Goodbye to the audience. The whole question of the audience has become problematic. Why are artists still meddling or mediating between people and their desires? Why are artists still meddling or mediating between people and their desires, or acting as desiring machines on behalf of others who, and for what reason, delegate their authority, their power to various stars, performers, writers, experts, or spokespersons? The most marginal art, not the avant-garde. The avant-garde has disappeared, hasn't it? The most marginal art, the most alternative art, now often consists of nothing but an ironic take on the impossibility of the artist as mediator. After Dada, everyone was supposed to become an artist. After Duchamp, after Situationism, after the art strike, which was itself nothing but irony, a parody of the social action jammed into the empty niche once occupied by the social. The artist now accomplishes nothing more than TV ads, holding up images to be admired, to be desired, to be purchased, whether with money or with pieces of one's soul. Images that are not the real goods, bites which never satisfy or cure, but simply create the thirst for more images, even images of utopia. Can we go so far as to say that the artist is more conscious than the ad exec or commodity designer? Haven't they also read McLuhan and Baudrillard? It's not that we're all postmodernists, Allah forbid. Nor have we all succumbed to the crypto-fascism of pomo morbidity. But, you see, we were trained up in all these art forms, which now seem so moribund. I frequently experience moments of nausea in bookstores at the thought of adding one more page to all that fucking print. No, it's not that we're postmodernists. It's that there is no more modern. The breaking of forms has let us down because we have found that the forms of art do not coincide with the structures of art. The structures of art involve mediation or negative alienation and commodification. Any content can be contained within these structures. Babylon can use all art forms, no matter how revolutionary, to further its simulation of life and its mechanization of control. Content means nothing. Style means nothing because the deep structure does not shift or crack. Art has been given its reservations where artists can play at being Indians. The art world is thus insulated from the rest of everyday life. Every once in a while, some redneck bigot notices these enclaves of privilege and starts a censorship scare. Jesse Helms and his ilk inject a bit of fresh blood into art, which for a moment can imagine itself an insurrectionary force. The sad irony is that Helms really believes art can change the world. The NEA liberals think that all art should be permitted because, after all, it's only art. Helms and his Klansmen are the last Americans outside their art reservations who still believe that art is powerful. Most people find art boring, but Helms finds it exciting. I wish Helms were right, but I fear he isn't. If he were, he would be our greatest enemy. As it is, he seems a rather sad clown. I believed art could spark off the revolt Helms seems to fear. I wish art had the power he hallucinates, but in my gloomiest moments, ... Meanwhile, however, I don't intend to give up the art enclaves any more than Native Americans want to give up their reservations. These little quasi-bohemias may be pathetic, but they're the last vestiges of our autonomy, a room of one's own. After all, we need peace and quiet in which to think about the strategy for the next step, the dismantlement of the art machine. Spanner in the substructure, sabot in the cloning device, resistance in the virtual reality arcades. I'm a bad prophet because I bet on anomalous events, pataphysical roulette. Ordinary punters may win more often, but only at cheesy odds. I may never win, but if I do, what a payoff. Billions and billions and billions to one. The problem then is the audience. We are ready, or so we like to think, to break down the final proscenium, erase the last borders between art and life. But the audience is still there, suggesting slyly that even entertainment, after all, is holy too. Tell us a story, the sacred request. It's in our blood, O College of Bards. But the bard's curse is supposed to be able to blight crops and bowl over crooked politicians. The bard is not just another image monger. The bard, the shaman poet, wields power. When the bard pays attention, even wild animals come round to snuff at the psychic overflow. In Iran and the Soviet Union in the old days, they used to jail poets, even execute them for poems. Now that was censorship. Most of these Americans are not moaning about banned books or burned paintings, much less torture. They're complaining because the state won't support their particular little enclave anymore. Well, it's true. I like it here on the reservation. It's cozier than the outside. And I believe in taking the state for what I can get. But to complain about censorship, that's too much loss of face. A touch of Bushido, please. A sense of proportion. To be blunt, let's suppose that I live on a small stipend which allows me the luxury of going daily to the library, absorbing poetic facts, and assembling them into various forms of entertainment. Other people have to work for a living, and they, let's assume, need someone to provide them with precisely such entertainment. theory as prose poetry or whatever. Fine. Occasionally I even make a bit of money at it. Fine. But that's not my true desire. It's nice, but it's not satisfaction. It's not evil, but it's not utopia. Footnote. The disappearance of art does not mean the literal vanishment of the artist, nor of those who appreciate the artist's creations. Of course, the specialist in creative manifestations will exist in every society, including the most primitive or primordial known to ethnohistory. The hunter-gatherer, shaman, bard is not, however, a professional. If the creative specialist in the tribe spends his or her time hunting or gathering a little bit less than the others of the tribe, this is due to what Marcel Mauss called the economy of the gift, not the economy of the commodity. In certain traditional societies, everyone is an artist with her or his own specialty. And this is possible because the economy of such societies has not yet conceived of work as alienation. All livelihoods are arts, from midwifery to war. Nothing is mere labor. I insist that this is no mere romantic distortion of the economy of the gift, nor am I advocating a return to the Stone Age. As I said, I want to bomb myself back to the Stone Age. As the economy of the commodity has ended by nauseating us, however, I believe it is important to emphasize the existence, past, present, or future, of other possibilities. Meanwhile, as long as the work-consume dichotomy defines life and creation for so many of us, the artist will, of course, not abandon the audience to withdraw into some private dream of a golden age. My point is exactly the opposite. The audience has begun to abandon the artist, and in this disappearance, I see some reason for cheer. To return to the text. Now, a utopian poetics has been proposed. In this game, we construct utopian minimums and use them to measure our true desires. For us, therefore, poetics comes inescapably to concern itself with changing the world and changing it closer to our heart's desire, to quote Marx and Omer Khayyam. The image, though powerful, is no more than a talisman meant to invoke an occurrence in the real world. Pardon this loose terminology, let's say rather in everyday life. So, we want to accomplish more than just the ritual of holding up some icon of desire and mumbling a few prayers at it. We want effective prayers. Put that way, it sounds rather absurd. Let's say rather that we want to refuse to allow our desire to be recuperated once again into the post-spectacular economy of virtual reality. The reality in which we can have whatever we wish for, except without smell, without taste, and without touch. Let's try to imagine ourselves proclaiming either democratic shamanism or nothing. Are we really prepared to face that nothing? Nietzsche founded his project on it. Are we too chicken even to discuss it? Give me the suppression and realization of art, or give me... Well, are we ready to face martyrdom for a goal even vaguer than freedom of speech? For art? Again, a reductio ad absurdum. Far be it from me to propose anything so 19th century. Perhaps it would make more sense to suggest that we live for art, that we begin at last to live as if our art were meant for something, some action. As for the nothing, we'll face it when we have to. Meanwhile, dolce far niente, sweet do nothing, rather than nihilism. The harvest still ripens, the table is still laid. Let's say that art would be for once and at last to enjoy it, the feast, the excessive generosity of being. Not the image, but the pleasure. Sweet do nothing, the ludic principle, jouissance, say yes to the world, and so on. This, I fear, would make the audience impossible. No one consumes the play I am hypothesizing, either as image or as commodity. Either we all play, or else we're back to our starting point again, audience and artist divided by the proscenium, the medium, the sacrifice. I have a footnote here. The artist sacrifices talent for money. The audience sacrifices money for talent. But which is priest? Which is deity? Who cuts whom? One way to visualize the work of art without an audience would be as a secret society, or as the Chinese call them, a tong. Tact and tactics, however, demand that no more be printed, or perhaps spoken publicly, about the tong than the bare hint of its possible existence. The tong demands mystery now, at once, immediately, and without mediation. Frankly, I think this is happening and will happen, whether anyone theorizes about it or not. New structures are emerging which depend on reciprocity rather than production and consumption. Synergetic, non-hierarchical experiments in mutuality and mutability. Evanescent tongues, temporary autonomous zones, encrypted webworks, pirate utopias. The problem of work is being worked on. The work-consume dichotomy, or work-consume-die, is being undermined and sabotaged. This is happening at the level of everyday life, not in the media, not in the spectacle, not in the economy of control, not in the realm of theory. We might go so far as to anticipate and to claim, perhaps prematurely, that the media are void. The sacrifice is empty. The proscenium has evaporated. All we need to do is exorcise the spooks and say goodbye to the audience. This is called the criminal bee, B-E-E, like a quilting bee. Nietzsche says somewhere that the true free spirit will not wish to see the laws of the herd abolished, lest there exist nothing to struggle against and overcome. Little danger of such an abolishment at this point, one might suppose. Since Nietzsche's time, law has perhaps mutated from a complex but dimensional tool of the oppressor class to the subtle, fractal, all-pervasive self-image of the spectacle. Law simulates the dictatorship of the commodity, forever promising and forever withdrawing the utopia of justice. Our founding myths here in America, which take the form of texts, such as a Declaration of Independence or a Bill of Rights, etc., prove so infinitely flexible as to become, like all myths, their opposites. The law no longer seems like some dialectical edge, as it was for Nietzsche, but rather a viral ooze infecting the very fabric of language and thought. One can no longer distinguish between cops and cop culture, the media-induced hallucination of a society defined by its lawyers and police. 10 minutes in a video store should convince any impartial observer that we live in a police state of consciousness, far more pervasive than the Nazis, those crude early pioneers of amphetamine, television, and ballistics. What, for example, would a UFO alien visitor think of a planet whose favorite icon appeared to consist of an angry law enforcement official pointing a gun at the observer? Some few subjects may free their minds for brief moments from the flickering omnipresence of this one true axiomatic image of our moment in time, as Nixon used to call the present. No doubt they will at once begin to wonder about the possibility of overcoming the law, both as a social code which labels our desires forbidden, and as an ectoplasmic superego, or cop of the inner landscape, suffocating us with the fear of our own passions. The first step in any real utopia is to look in the mirror and demand to know my true desires, an action which already presupposes at least the temporary overcoming of conditioned anxiety, of the fear that a demon may appear in the glass, or a demonic cop. Now, what do I see? The first image to float to the surface of the scry stone, the magic mirror, is the criminal. My desires are illegal. My manias are forbidden in civilization. The moral code embedded within the legal code defines my appetites as injury. Charles Fourier, and Nietzsche both defined the criminal as a natural insurrectionary spirit in revolt against the stifling repression of the social consensus. The criminal's tragedy, however, lies in being merely the opposite of the cop, a mirror image, and therefore equally an image, a trap, a definition imposed within the language of control. And in any case, the deeper I look into the glass, the less I see of any desires which I myself might label wrong, according to my own personal code of ethics. Wrong, for me, means counterproductive and ultimately self-immiserating. I don't want to realize my desires at the expense of other people's misery, not because such action would be immoral, but because it would be psychically self-defeating. Misery breeds misery. Those who are caught in the trap of trying to realize desires by hurting others are all, in my experience, themselves miserable and psychically poor. Crime, in this sense of the word, pays, but it doesn't pay enough. I reject it for purely selfish reasons. To realize my desires, I must overcome or even break the law, but I do not need to do wrong according to my own light, nor will I accept the consensus label of criminal. This explains why fascism is not an answer. Fascism is a desiring machine, but only for an amoral elite who achieve their goals through the creation and destruction of enemies and victims, as in the Marquis de Sade. Fourier, however, Charles Fourier, asserts that desire itself remains impossible unless all desires are possible, that passion involves the other, and therefore defines the only possible or real society. This realization draws the boundary between fascism and anarchism. Gazing yet deeper into the mirror, in fact, I begin to see that I'm not alone there, that the self implies others, that we are co-implicated in each other's desires. And here we come to a stage higher, in Nietzsche's view, than mere criminality. The society of free spirits, or as Max Stirner called it, the union of self-owning ones. A form of organization exists which evades the murderous dialectic of institutions, the paradoxical counterproductivity of institutions, as Ivan Illich calls it. This different kind of group might be identified with Fourier's passional series, the psychically linked number of humans needed to express and realize a shared or common passional goal. Such harmonial associations are prevented from coming into being, Fourier insisted, by civilization itself, which is founded on mass immiseration. He believed that utopia would first have to be established in order for true series to form spontaneously out of the various passions for sensual and sexual fulfillment, for attractive labor, and for the total physical and psychic realization of the individual in society. In other words, Fourier made an absolute category of society, just as Nietzsche and Stirner made an absolute category of the individual. Our task is not to follow either of these ideas, but to deconstruct, synthesize, and reconstruct. Out of this process, we hope to see arise not merely another ideology or another no-place place, utopos, which is what utopia means, however brilliant or imaginally stimulating, but rather a praxis, a mode of action for realizing the series and manifesting its passion here and now, or so close to here and now we can taste it. Elsewhere, I have considered a number of possible forms for such groups, including the loosest, most temporary and ad hoc organizational agglomerations. Here, however, I want to consider only one aspect of such groupings, that is, their illegality. I will argue that illegality means more than mere law-breaking. Illegality as a positive attribute of the temporary autonomous zone implies that the very structure or deepest motivation of the T.A.Z. group contravenes or necessitates the overcoming of consensus values, and that this is true even when no statute or regulation has been broken. But in order to avoid as much metaphysics as possible here, we can discuss some actual existing groups or situations which approximate the temporary autonomous zone concept to some degree. And by criticizing their shortcomings, perhaps we can arrive at a clearer view of possibilities for the immediate future. 1. How am I doing? You ready for more of this? You want me to finish? Okay. All right. 1. The web work. Computer hacking has so far turned up nothing that has enhanced my life. Nor can I detect much enhancement in the lives of the hackers themselves. The goal of liberating all information is noble but ludicrously unobtainable. This should by now be obvious to all who watched while the state smashed to a pulp a few hapless liberators of a few bits of useless information. The potential for liberation inherent in the BBS as a tool for social projects has also not yet been realized. The BBS meganet involves untold thousands of email enthusiasts who have so far not sent or received one real good. Someone please tell me I'm wrong. Okay, we can talk about that afterwards. No, I'd like to hear. I really want to be told I'm wrong. But 99% idle chatter, 1% maybe interesting information. But no chicken stew, no orgies, and no enlightenment. All right? Orgies where? In the computer network? All right. Give me a break. Now at last, the hackers have begun to experiment with cryptology. The cypherpunks boast that soon secure networks will be available to email users. One might issue the hackers a challenge here. Deliver to me one thing which is illegal and which I want and which I could not have obtained so easily or at all without a computer network. I'd even accept a nice bit of high-resolution pornography. Prove that computers can supply it, or at least expedite, something more than publishing programs or creepy-sounding synthetic music. I demand secrets, and I'm getting bored with waiting, thanks to a lifetime spent reading science fiction. 2. Another organizational possibility, the gathering. Considered as a temporary autonomous zone, the gathering can be called and held without any computer assistance, which is indeed fortunate, because the gathering is a vital necessity now, today. And it is already evolving spontaneously out of this need. A number of kinds of gatherings nowadays aspire to manifest as temporary autonomous zones. The neo-pagan festivals, the rainbow camps, collaborative art events, open conspiracies such as Queer Nation or WAC, raves, anarchist collectives, hypercultural intentional communities, secret societies meeting for risky or illegal or insurrectionary goals, etc., drug dealers. These groups or gatherings constitute the only viable immediate means of realizing passional series in real-time everyday life, in opposition to the forces of dissipation, alienation, and suffocation by which the consensus vitiates and dissolves all human aspiration to solidarity and festal values. Any critique leveled at these existing groups or gatherings, therefore, is meant as constructive in every sense of the word. The problems lie in two areas, philosophical and organizational. Some groups fail to realize the full implications of their reaction against the spectacle, which remains instinctual and hence philosophically unsound. For example, the 1960s delusion that we can use the media for our own ends still persists, so that many groups are ruined by the very publicity they thought they needed in order to attain their goals. Once such a group allows itself to become recuperated as part of the spectacle of countercultural dissent, the Punch and Judy show of the media state, it will be compromised or even doomed. But an understanding of the dialectics of media should enable the group to devise a strategy of organization and praxis based on evasive or nomadic models of resistance rather than on the old New Left shibboleths of confrontation and seizing the media. On the level of tactics, of organizational detail and specific projects, this philosophical preparedness should result in more effective means for the expression, realization, manifestation of desire on the level of everyday life. Publicity is a bad tactic, while tact and virtual clandestinity are good tactics. By virtual clandestinity, I mean not total secrecy, but rather the skillful avoidance of counterproductive publicity and recuperation. These are good tactics for the groups we are discussing here because, one must repeat, these groups need to engage in illegality, even to approximate their intended purpose. The state deals with certain illegalities not in any systematic way, but in spectacular spasms of violent repression, similar to public executions in 17th century London, meant to terrorize and paralyze any potential rebels against the norms of order. The computer hackers are treated this way, as are the sex and drug dissidents, black nationalists, and other proponents of forbidden passions. In this climate of simulated justice, i.e. terror, it makes no sense whatsoever to seek publicity for a group's illegal or immoral activities. Converts attracted via the media are usually summer soldiers and neurotics. And if the wrong politician happens to catch your broadcast, you may end up as the next bad example, crushed beneath the boot of history for all to see, live on 5. It's your world. Get this close, as the ads for PBS so breathlessly express it. Oh yes, let Geraldo rattle your cage. That's, maybe you haven't heard that slogan out here yet. To give an example of some organizations, NAMBLA and Normal have both had their membership lists seized by police, the price of 60s media idealism. NAMBLA and Normal have achieved absolutely nothing of their reformist goals and may even have done damage to their own causes through their misunderstanding of the media. This is not the 1960s, when the CIA could still lose control of LSD to a bunch of hippie publicists, or television inadvertently contribute to anti-war sentiment by neglecting to censor the body bag count. We've had decades of Republican intelligence, late capitalist control conspiracy, power mongering since then. Communism is dead, and now you're the enemy. Wake up. Wise up. Most of the world has sunk deep into media trance. They can't wake up and smell the coffee because the coffee has no smell. It's become pure image. Television is the real world, the real thing now. And if you don't believe it, you are outside reality. This is far worse than being a criminal. At least the criminal has some relationship with the consensus. One must pity the radicals whose plan of battle always includes open boasting about their intransigent opposition to all establishment values, alerting the enemy as if only 5 seconds on the evening news or the lifestyle report could possibly validate their revolutionary ideas and their pathetic personalities. Once and for all, the insurrection is not a commodity. My desires are not commodities, and the media cannot reproduce them, much less satisfy them. One doesn't need to be a media ecologist recommending a media fast to see that all the big media must be understood, criticized, and overcome, or at least evaded, if we're to get anywhere with our project. 3. The insurrection. I'd like to answer those critics who have accused the temporary autonomous zone of being an evasion or a postponement or a substitute for the insurrection or even for the revolution. In part, these criticisms come from some Latin American comrades who seem to feel uneasy about the adventurist aspect of the T.A.Z., and from North Americans who called it an anarchist club med. Tad Kepley said that. Both critiques are important. The T.A.Z. is not an idea or an ideology, but something that is happening. As such, it needs good criticism. On the contrary, I've tried to emphasize over and over again that the temporary autonomous zone is another way of building the kernel of the new society within the shell of the old, as the Wobblies used to say. Yep. And that the temporary autonomous zone should serve as the matrix for the emergence of a Sorelian myth of uprising. Georges Sorel, highly recommended. However, it must also be repeated that the USA, at any rate, can scarcely be described in 1993 as a pre-revolutionary society. The election of a corrupt and venal pseudo-liberal regime which will smooth over a few rough spots in the spectacle while the Republicans reorganize to continue building the New World Order in 1996 makes the possibility of an American uprising even less likely. Are we then to postpone all liberatory action until things get worse again? This would scarcely be logical or creditable. Those of us who feel so irrationally unhappy with the wonderful world of commodities and neo-Puritan reaction cannot justly be denied the chance of local and transient experiments of utopian realization, now, or as soon as possible, in our lifetimes, in our lives. And this struggle is not without relevance for those people elsewhere in the world whom we may consider our natural allies, such as indigenous and tribal groups or revolutionary movements. In this sense, the temporary autonomous zone is like a pre-echo of the insurrection, a foretaste of its great liberatory energies, and can even be seen as a necessary step toward the revolution which will realize utopia. Thus, it should be emphasized that the temporary autonomous zone has not only a festal, ludic, or festaludic, celebratory or material bodily principle in view, but also, like yang to yin, an inevitable measure of insurrectionary risk and intention to remake the world. The temporary autonomous zone cannot be realized solely as a hedonic exercise, which would lead to just charges of club medism or even crypto-fascism. The temporary autonomous zone goes beyond the merely hedonic because it wants to expand and multiply till it infects or even becomes the social. And therefore, even though the temporary autonomous zone may be secret and closed and intensely pleasurable for its members, it must also be seen as a struggle which opens itself potentially to all kindred spirits and fellow warriors. To repeat the sentence that I just footnoted, the temporary autonomous zone cannot be realized solely as a hedonic exercise any more than the revolution can be realized without dancing, as Emma Goldman put it. Most of the temporary autonomous zone-like groups and gatherings known to me fail to measure up in one or the other of these areas. The political groups have still not mastered the pleasure principle, while the lifestyle groups have still not mastered the politics. Political praxis of some sort, of course, adds to the risk involved in the temporary autonomous zone, and therefore increases the need for tact. But it also increases the pleasure. The group jouissance, the group coming within the temporary autonomous zone. This pleasure results from the very sense of overcoming, first mentioned by Nietzsche when he spoke of the free spirit's joy at evading the law of the herd. And if this sounds elitist, remember that from the anarchist point of view, the herd consists precisely and only of those who agree to be herded. After the revolution, no doubt, free spirits would find some other source for the pleasure of overcoming. However, until then, the law still exists as an edge on which to sharpen our lives. But the revolution, in a certain sense, can be said not to exist, since it has not happened within the history it wishes to claim as its field of activity. As for the law, it exists only as spectacle and as a pattern of spasms of terror. But the temporary autonomous zone is rooted, however evanescently, within the life we live, within the material and the imaginal world in which we have our genuine being, however fragmentary and even tragic. And within the celebratory mode of pleasure enhanced by doubling and redoubling, which is the only excuse for society we know. Rather than crime, it might make more sense, or better poetry, to speak of sorcery, which has all the connotations of secrecy and power we desire for the emerging temporary autonomous zone, an air of menace, of invisibility, and of the realization of desires. As for illegality, well, a quilting bee is not illegal, yet it can be a perfect temporary autonomous zone. Sooner or later, however, even the quilting bee runs the danger of becoming the object of tourism. It will become a banal imitation of itself, a pitiful spectacle, unless it can create, at least for a moment, an economy of life capable of persisting, even if only briefly, outside the prison of work, consume, die. And that economy, by its very nature, threatens the spook world of control. Eventually, the bee will be illegal, since it is already considered insane. And so the immediatist quilting bee should begin now to act as if it were already illegal, and to embrace a philosophy of illegalism. Today quilts, tomorrow perhaps the uprising. Our kind of bee or tong might be devoted to sex info exchange, tax evasion, hashish farming, or even to orgies, credit scams, or gun running. It will still have the structure of the immediatist quilting bee. And so the immediatist bee should already anticipate a possible need to run guns or stage orgies. It should be prepared to act within the cracks of the monolith of simulation like a true gang of Johnsons, like a swamp full of calicacs, like conspirators whose purpose is really to breathe together, like criminals for the human race, like pirate utopians for peace, like guerrillas of harmony. Thank you.
Okay, well, Joe didn't give me much of an introduction. I'm the author of Quantum Reality, the definitive book on modern physics. And no, that's not a joke. This is true. And one of the things, Hakim, about evading the law, remember, the laws of physics don't need cops. We're so confident in the laws of physics that we don't even bother to enforce them.